Hey, shalom, and welcome to Wisdom and Torah Ministries, and this is Did You Know? Hey, have you ever studied the context of the first century writings from the perspective of a social system and structure and a caste system? This is something that I've been really heavily been studying for the last 6, 7, 8 months. And let me tell you something, if something fascinating happens, let's get right into it, right? So we can learn a little bit more about this principle. Did you know that in the first century, it was established in the letters of Paul that the culture of the Roman Empire was based on a social system, social classes? For example, you have the slaves, you have the freedmen. They were non-citizens. They have no rights. There were no land. They had no honor in the structure and the social classes of the Roman Empire. Then you have the plebeians. They were the clients of the patricians, of the wealthy people in Rome. They were always seeking the favor of the higher classes, in this case, the nobles, the patricians. Now, a plebeian can go up to be a patrician, but for a patrician and a noble to become a freedman, slave, or a plebeian was a high level of shame. Therefore, it was always working up yourself to a higher level of status. Now, did you know that Paul is writing to all the believers in the ancient world, specifically all through Asia Minor and the Roman Empire under imperial rule, in the context of how the Messiah, who is our mediator, who is our patron, leading us to the great patron, Yahweh the Father, will give us the great favor, will give us the understanding. Paul will try to give us the understanding that now in Yeshua, there's not a class system in the Torah. Did you know also that in Judea, in the first century, even the Talmud talks about how when they came from Babylon, they had 10 different castes of people. Now, I remind you, in the Torah, there's no such thing as a caste. Now, there are roles of the kings of the line of David, of the priests of the line of Levi, but there's not a caste system. Well, Rico, how would you know there's not a caste system? Because the Torah tells us. Let me go to the verses right there. You see, John 3:16 says, "For Elohim so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life." Also, we have that in Philippians chapters 1, verse 20 says, actually, let me move on from that one. I want to go to another particular verse that will help us understand this a little bit better. Okay? So, right here, let me get to this one. Numbers 15, verse 13, 14, 15, and 16. It says, "Every native born must do the same things in this way, to present an offering made by fire as a pleasing aroma to Elohim. And if a stranger foreigner, a resident foreigner, is living with you, or whoever is among you in future generations, and prepares an offering made by fire as a pleasing aroma to Elohim, he must do it the same way you are to do it. One statute must apply to you who belong to the congregation, and to the resident foreigner, or a gerim, who is among you, as a permanent statute for your future generations. You and the resident foreigner, or a gerim, will be alike before Elohim. Will be alike before Elohim. One law, one custom must apply to you and the resident foreigner who lives alongside you." Interesting, because we see that, and in the Torah, there's no such thing as a caste system. Caste system is a product of religion. Where did Israel come from? From Egypt. When Israel were in Egypt, they enjoyed life of a equity when Joseph was in power. Why? Because Joseph was their patron, because Joseph was leading them to Pharaoh, and Joseph was their patron in order to facilitate for Jacob and the children of Israel to have a better life in Egypt. But after Joseph died, they came under the oppression of Pharaoh, who did not regard them. Have you ever studied the caste system in Egypt, where Yahweh took Israel out of? Pharaoh was the king, just like Caesar was the king. Then you have the government officials, nobles and priests. Then you have the soldiers, the scribes, the merchants, the artisans, the farmers, and the slaves and servants. And Israel was all the way in the bottom. But then our king, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, he sent the Redeemer, Moses, a messenger of the royal court of Elohim, to redeem Israel out of Egypt and to turn the pyramid upside down, to make the last first and the first last. Get it? So now what we have is the Creator extending equity to the children of Israel, a righteous, just law on Mount Sinai, extended righteousness and freedom to Israel, so that they will become a light unto the world, and commanded Israel never to oppress those who are less fortunate. Why? Because they were the bottom of the structure of the caste system and oppressive in Egypt. Thus, we are to remember that the Elohim of Israel is a righteous king who does not oppress those people who are less fortunate. That's why everybody had the same amount of bread, manna. Everybody had to pay the half shekel. There was equitable rights to everyone in this week's Torah portion, Mishpatim. Now, let's talk a little bit about honor. See, did you know that in the ancient world thought that honor was limited only to a few people, so well as gold and money, fame, honor, and position? Culturally, was established a concept of honor based on a social caste system. I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that Yeshua is come to destroy man-made caste system to establish the righteousness and the equity and the love of the Creator to all people, not only Israel but all people. Now, did you know that in India today they are still working under a caste system? You have the Brahmins, the highest level of the caste in India, and then you have the Dalits, the untouchables, in the bottom of the structure. Can you imagine if you go to India today and you begin to talk to the Dalits and the Sudras and some of those people, and you present the gospel to the lower classes as the way out of their situation and their social structure and to have equity in the kingdom of Elohim? Imagine how the Dalit, the untouchables, will feel knowing that now they have hope in the world, that they're not looked upon as the bottom of the barrel. They are now treated with equity and dignity, just like the Torah teaches us to do. That's why we are to take care of the homeless and the widows and the strangers and the Levites. Now, where did this come from? It comes from the mandate given to Abraham in Genesis 18. But Abraham shall become a great and populous nation, and in him shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. For I know that he, Abraham, will teach his sons, and his house after him, that they will keep the way of Adonai, to do mishpat v'sadakah, to do righteousness and justice, so that Adonai may bring upon Abraham all things whatsoever he has spoken. And what was it that he promised Abraham? A land, an inheritance, and a seed, a descendants. Now, check this out. Equity in the kingdom of Elohim. Exodus chapter 22, verse 21 to 27 says this: And you shall not hurt the stranger, nor afflict them, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. What does that mean? Let me go back. You were all the way in the bottom, right there. So therefore, don't treat people like they belong down there. Treat them like they belong, equitable, with the same rights as you. Let me go back here. It says, and you shall hurt no widow or orphan, and you shall not afflict them by ill treatment. And they shall cry out loud to me, and I will surely hear their voice. And I will be very angry, and will slay you with a sword, and your wives shall be widows, and your children orphans. Oh my, that sounds so extreme from the God of creation. How dare he say that about killing people? Don't you understand that if we treat people dishonorably and within a caste system as second-class citizens, and we oppress those people in need, and we're making them, and we're treating them as the bottom of the barrel, as slaves and freedmen, then we are putting the character and the integrity and the honor of our king to shame. Thus, we are teaching a gospel of preference. And I remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that even Peter understood in Acts chapters 10 in regards to Cornelius. And Peter, opening his mouth, said, in truth, I comprehend that Elohim is not one to show partiality, but in every nation, he that fears him and works righteousness is acceptable by him. Hey, what does it mean by working righteousness? It means taking care of the homeless, the widows, the strangers, the Levites, and not suppressing them, not oppressing them, and taking care of the homeless and the naked. Exactly what Yeshua said in Matthew chapters 25. And verse 27 of Exodus 22 says, for this is his clothing, this is the only covering of his nakedness. How shall he sleep? If he then will cry to me, I will hearken to him, for I am merciful. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I will finish with this. Let me tell you this. Have you ever considered studying Galatians in the context of the first century Roman imperial cult structure of order and the system of caste, the caste system in the first century. You have Caesar, who is the great patron, the Son of God according to the Romans, the King of Peace according to the Romans, that even his birthday brought Pax Romana according to the Romans, that he was the Son of God according to the Romans, that he was the one who maintained order from chaos in the Roman Empire, and he was the great patron of all the kingdom. And then you have the nobles, you have the patricians, you have the plebeians, you have the freedmen and the slaves. Notice that you have now slaves and freedmen, and Yeshua opens the door not only for Israel to return to the covenant, but also the nations, just like Amos chapters 9 verse 11 says. Now, Paul, understanding this, he now tells the Galatians, he says, there is neither Jew nor Greek, neither slave nor free. There is neither male nor female, for you are all one in Yeshua Messiah. Hey, did you know that the expression you are all one used to be an ancient Near Eastern covenantal language expression? Now, verse 29 is the key. He says, if you are Messiahs, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. The issue here in Galatians has nothing to do with salvation. The issue here is justification. How are these Gentiles, how are these freedmen, slaves, plebeians, and patricians fit in the kingdom of Elohim under a structure of a righteous king who brings equity to all people? And by the way, the freedmen and the slaves could own no land. So thus, what do we have? We have the Elohim of Israel extending equity to all people, and he extends to them the one thing that Caesar cannot give them, which was land, which meant honor, which meant a position of honor in all of the kingdom. In Ezekiel chapters 47, verse 21 to 23 tells us that anywhere that the stranger would graft themselves to or will go into any of the tribes, there they are to be treated like a native born, and there among those 12 tribes, they are to be given an inheritance. Thus says Adonai Elohim. Ladies and gentlemen, the Elohim of Israel does not treat you as a second-class citizen. He doesn't treat you as a high elite. He doesn't treat you as a slave. He doesn't treat you as a peasant. He has given us the right to be called the sons of the living God. Why? Because he has extended grace and he has become our patron. So from this moment forward, stop treating one another as second-class citizens. Stop oppressing one another, and let us uplift and honor the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who has extended the God salvation to all the nations so that we can be a light unto the world and declare the wonders of the Torah to them, so that they will know the Adonai Hu Elohim, Adonai Hu Elohim, Adonai Hu Ha Elohim. Shalom to you guys. I'll see you soon.